All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Pink Shirt Day event with Monique Gray Smith. I'm so glad that you are all here today and joining us, whether you are joining us live or watching the recording. I'm glad that you're here with us and you are here to learn and all that stuff with us today. So, today is Pink Shirt Day. And Pink Shirt Day is a day that we wear pink to show that we stand up against bullying, that we are saying that bullying is not okay. So today we are going to be talking a little bit about some of the antidotes, that's a big word, or solutions for stopping bullying and preventing bullying before it happens. And those are things like kindness and respect and empathy and understanding and celebrating the diversity around us, the things that make us all different. So that is kind of what we are going to be talking about today. But before we get started, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping to show you what we are doing. So this is our plan for the day. This is our agenda. This is the welcome. This is the part where I talk to you right now and you listen and you're like, get on with the show. All right. So this is the welcome. And then Monique will do her presentation where she's going to read us a couple of her books and talk to us a little bit about what I just mentioned. And then we will do a brain break where you can get up and move your bodies. And then we will have some time for the Q&A at the end. If you have questions during our time together, you can write them in the chat or on the Q&A form, which you can find in the description of the live stream, where I will be able to check those out and ask the questions to Monique at the end. All right. And then we'll come back together for a little bit of wrap up, and then we'll head on our way. Sound good? All right. So, like I said at the beginning, my name is Haley, and I am the lead educator here at Joyful Learning, and I am coming to you from Fort Langley, which is right here, which means that I live on the traditional and unceded territory of the Kwantlen, Katzie, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations, who have cared for this land and lived on this land for thousands and thousands of years, and I am grateful for their stewardship, and I am grateful to be able to live and learn here as well. Our presenter today is coming to us from, I believe, Victoria, which is not too far when you think of it in the grand scheme of Canada. And I know that we have friends joining us from all across Canada. So if you want to put in the chat or on the Q&A form where you are coming from today, I would love to see all the different places that we have people joining us from. All right. So like I said, our presenter today is Monique Gray Smith, and she is an author, and she has written a bunch of books. She's written books for kids, a couple that we're going to read today, and a few others. And she's written books for older kids and young adults. So, Monique, I wanted to just say welcome and thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you. I'll start just by speaking a little bit of my language and say Tansei, which means like hello, friends and relatives. Tansei and Doti Mahat. Mitanin and Eskimon. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the gift of being with you today. And Kinanaskumotin to the Lekwungen speaking peoples where I live here in this place we call Victoria. And, I look out my windows and it's absolutely beautiful. And I'm grateful to those who have been the caretakers and the stewards of the land and the water and the air so that I can live here and raise my family here. If you've ever traveled to Victoria, British Columbia, you know how special this place is. And so if you come back, I invite you to just pause for a moment when you come and offer gratitude to the Lekwungen speaking peoples for their care of this land and this water. And it really leads us as we talk about Pink Shirt Day and the importance of kindness and respect and upholding people's dignity. And sometimes that can be hard to think about. What does that mean to uphold somebody's dignity? But it means that the words that I say, either to them or in front of them, or even behind their back when they can't hear me, aren't words that kind of hold them down. They're words that hold them up, that keep their self esteem intact. And they're words of respect. And so for me, I think, you might hear a land acknowledgement wherever you're joining from us on a regular basis, but in some ways, that isn't a way of us being kind and being respectful to those who have been the caretakers and to also the earth. that she's really needing us in these times to take care of her and all the living beings as well. For us not to be a bully also to the earth and our non human relatives. So I feel incredibly blessed to be with you today on this day as we talk about why we wear pink shirts, why we wear pink, the importance of kindness and of respect and of love. I think that this day is also a day that we're reminded that love is important, that our care for each other as human beings is absolutely integral to how we live in our society. And you, as children and young people, you understand this in ways that sometimes we as adults forget. And, for me, sometimes people say, well, why do you write books about happiness and love and kindness and joy and hope? Because there are aspects of the life that my parents role modeled, but also sometimes they were aspects that weren't in my home. And so there were times, you might have ever heard that saying that sometimes hurt people hurt people. That sometimes when we're not feeling very good about ourselves, we might act in a way towards somebody else or maybe to our pet or even to a tree in a way that isn't very kind because what's happening inside of us, we're not sure exactly how to be with those emotions, how to handle in some ways the hurt. And so sometimes the best way is to just talk about what's going on with somebody you care about, being outside, no matter what the weather's like, because being outside can actually help us to remember that beautifulness that's within each of us, but also the beautifulness that is the earth and all living beings. So that's why I write, is because it reminds me of the important teachings that my parents gave me, my Auntie Ellen, and also how when I think about, our future, that you as the children and young people, you're going to be the leaders one day. You'll be, the educators like Haley, like the adults in your classroom, the educators and educational assistants, your teachers, your principals, your vice principals, the bus drivers, the custodians, the coaches. You will be those people one day. And so when we know how to be kind, when we know how to be respectful, when we know how to be generous, then when we lead and when we take care of each other, we do it in a different way because our heart is full. And so that's where these books come from, is supporting you as young people and children and us also as adults to remember about having a full heart as much as possible. It's funny, often when I read, I'll get comments from teachers and emails later just saying, I needed to hear that today. I needed to hear that message today. So, you as children and young people, you have the same emotions as we do as adults. And sometimes you think maybe that we have figured out how to handle them, but sometimes we don't know either. And we need reminders about kindness and respect and about love and sharing our love and the beauty in our hearts. So, I'm going to start by this book here called You Hold Me Up. Oh, it's got a sticky on it there. You Hold Me Up. So, you can see I wrote it, Monique Gray Smith. And the illustrator, her name is Danielle Daniel. And she's got a number of children's picture books, but also middle grade and young adult novels as well. Really beautiful writer and illustrator. She's one of those incredible humans who can both draw the pictures and write the story. And this book is published by Orca Book Publishers. So let's begin. You hold me up when you are kind to me. When you share with me, when you learn with me, you hold me up when you play with me, when you laugh with me, when you sing with me, you hold me up when you comfort me, when you listen to me, when you respect me, you hold me up, I hold you up, and we hold each other up. So that's you hold me up. And I know it might look backwards on your screen. There's a couple pages that I want to come back to that it's amazing, when you think about what the illustrator, the person who draws the pictures, what they can bring out in a book. About 5 years ago, I was in Prince Edward Island and I was traveling with the first children's book that I had come out called My Heart Fills with Happiness, a picture book about what fills our hearts with happiness. And I had read it to the children and we were in circle and talking about what fills our hearts with happiness. And one little person put up their hand and I called on them and they were so serious and they said, sometimes the person who draws the pictures tells the story better than the person who writes the words. And I giggled to myself and there was a few giggles with the children because it's very true. The illustrators are so important in our books. And they can do just with the smallest of things, they can make a huge difference. It's just like us in every day. A very small act of kindness can have a huge difference in somebody's day. So let's look at this illustration. This is the page. You hold me up when you comfort me. Look at the adult's lips. They're the shape of a heart, right? Indicating that what comes out of our mouth is words of love and words of kindness. And that's one way that we can comfort and care for each other is to have words of love and of kindness. And then this last page, we hold each other up. Now, if you really look at this illustration, there are hearts everywhere. If you look at their legs crisscross, there are hearts. If you look around the adult with a long black ponytail around the collar on her neck of her shirt, there are hearts. On all of their lips, there are hearts. Some of the leaves together are the shape of the heart. Because when we read books and we see those images, sometimes our brain takes them in without us even noticing them. So those hearts on the lips remind us to speak with kindness, to speak with love, to be generous, to say words that make somebody feel good. And when I think about that, I think about, how our words can be medicine. And I don't mean like the medicine that you get at the doctor, but the medicine for our hearts or not. And so I encourage you to think about, how can your mouth, how can your words be words of kindness, be words of love, be words of respect? So that was You Hold Me Up, illustrated by Daniel, and all the ways that we hold each other up. When you're kind to me, when you share with me, when you play with me. These are big words, but it's called being in a reciprocal relationship. And that's really important when we think about Pink Shirt Day, that being in relationship means that I'm not always giving, that I'm also receiving at times. Might not be from the same person, but from someplace else. I too am receiving kindness and care and love. This book, When We Are Kind, you can see here, this is Dene, may also be known as the Navajo language, illustrated by Nicole Neidhart. This was the first children's book that she has ever illustrated. I think now she's on book number 5. So it's really beautiful to see how, over time, her illustrations change and grow. She's an incredibly gifted illustrator. So this is when we are kind. I am kind when I help my family. I am kind when I share with my friends. I am kind when I take my dog for an extra long walk. I am kind when I help my neighbor. I am kind when I bring food to my elders. I am kind when I only take from the earth what I need. I am kind when I take care of myself and get a good night's sleep. I feel joy when my family and I are kind. I feel happy when my friend is kind to me. I feel comforted when my cat is kind to me. I feel loved when my elders are kind to me. I feel grateful when the earth is kind to me. I feel respectful when I am kind to myself. When we are kind, we remember we are all related. So that's When We Are Kind and illustrated by Nicole Neidhart. I want to come in and look at a few of the illustrations because this book talks about how it feels when we are kind and also how it feels when someone or something is kind to us. S- I'm kind when I bring food to my elders. So, this allows us to have some conversations about the different ways that kindness shows up in different cultures, different homes, different families. And when I mean different, I mean like on every block or apartment where we live, there are families in each home and how the kindness shows up in those families, how it really weaves into the fabric of the family is different. And so for some families, yes, the children and the young people will feed, bring food to the elders. And in some families, they might express their kindness in a different way. I'd really love you to think about that. Like in your family, how do you express kindness to each other? And in your family at school, because in many ways, that's what you are like in a classroom, right? You kind of build a sense of family for the 10 months that you're together. How are you kind to your school family? How are you kind to those members? Because our acts of kindness are, I want to say they're so important, but in many ways, right? They help our brain to be able to learn. They help our heart to feel settled for the day. They help us to just go, when we receive kindness. But not only when we receive kindness, but also when we act in kindness. And also, if I'm sitting in class and I see an act of kindness between two people, the same things happen in my brain and in my heart. It settles me and calms me. That's why, yes, it's so important we talk today about kindness and anti bullying. but it's also a conversation and something to think about every day about how do we respect each other? How do we care for each other? How do we build a sense of family in our classroom and in our school? How do we care for each other at home? How do we be kind in the world? Next time maybe you're at the shopping mall, you hold the door open for somebody, or you go to get groceries and you hold the door open. Or maybe you're getting on the bus and you let whoever's been standing there longer get on first. These simple acts make a difference in our world. And they make a difference not only those who we're extending them to, but also ourselves. I am kind when I only take from the earth what I need. So, this is one of our indigenous teachings. From many nations share this similar teaching that when we go out, before we take anything from the earth, before we pick berries or gather medicines or anything, we make an offering. In my teachings, that is an offering of tobacco, and not like the kind of tobacco usually you see people smoking, but a traditional tobacco. Or we make some kind of offering saying, we thank you for what we're about to take. And we pick whatever we need to pick, but we only take what we need or what we're going to give away. It's not about greed, it's about what I need in order to care for my family. And the deeper teachings is we never take the first ones because that might be the last one. So we might meander a little farther in to pick the berries. And this beautiful illustration are the salmon berries. And you can see how Nicole has done the color. So your eyes are drawn here and then up. And they kind of come around to mom's earrings. Maybe that's auntie or an older sibling, similar colors. So you can see and in here the shades, you can see the subtleness of a heart that Nicole has done in the illustration. So I'm always curious to see the illustrations when they come when I write books and the ways that the illustrators pull out the emotions that are in books. So this will be the one of the last ones I share. And this one, I am kind when I take care of myself and get a good night's sleep. Now, I have twins. They're 20 now. But when they were younger, there were some nights when it was like, you gotta go to bed. It's time for bed. And maybe if you look around your class, raise your hand if your parents or your aunties or your grandparents, whoever are the adults in your house, are saying to you, it's time for bed. You got to get to bed. One more glass of milk, one more glass of water. Rub my back. I got to go to the bathroom. But the reason they're wanting you to get to bed is because it is when your body and your brain replenishes itself so that you can be in a good way the next day. We need our sleep. It's one of the ways we take care of ourselves. And so you can see in this illustration all the elements Nicole's put in. The moccasins here with a warm rug on the bottom when the child wakes up and their feet, the teddy bear, the blanket with a West Coast, the camas that we have here in the springtime, bookshelf full. And then the very last one I want to share is this one. I feel comforted when my cat is kind to me. So when this illustration first came, I was like, oh, Nicole drew her cat and she included her in the book. But no, Nicole's cat is almost a twin image of our cat, Piper. So she was actually drawing her own cat in that book. So that was when we are kind. And one of the things I think about when I think about kindness and days when we talk about not being mean to each other, right? The anti-bullying is that yes, it's important that we are kind to each other as human beings, for sure. But we also need to be kind to the earth and to all living beings. That we're in a time that, we are needing to care for our biggest mother, the earth, in a way that we might not have thought about before, that there has been a lot of bullying to her. And so for us, our acts of kindness to each other as humans, to your classmates, to your schoolmates at home, is absolutely important. To be respectful, to invite them to play, to invite them to draw with you, to invite them in whatever way is possible, to be part of. In Cree, we have this word "to wow." And what it means is like if you came to my house, I'd say "to wow," like welcome, come on in. But what it means in a much bigger way is that there's always room. And when I think about this day, a pink shirt day, that's what I think about is that there's always room in the circle. And when we think about that there's always room in the circle for every single human being, then we don't even think about bullying. We don't think about all those ways of being mean to each other. What comes more naturally is how do we care for each other? And sometimes, like I said earlier, when our hearts have been hurt, it can be harder to care for others. It can be harder to care for ourselves. And that's sometimes when we need somebody else to care for us. To maybe, if your school allows, to share some food together, to share time together, to share a laugh, to invite them to play soccer on the field with you. Whatever way to make sure that there's room for everyone in the circle. So I think, Haley, that's where we'll leave those two discussions about those two books, You Hold Me Up and When We Are Kind, and see if we've got maybe some questions or curiosities or wonderings.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for sharing those books with us and for all your words and thoughts about how we can be kind and how we can show respect to people, not just on a day that we wear pink, not just on Pink Shirt Day, but every day of how we can create an environment in our classrooms and in our families and in our communities where there is room for everyone and where everyone feels like they belong. And so thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So we are going to take a moment before we do the Q&A. We are going to take a moment for a brain break. Just a reminder that if you do have questions for the Q&A, you can write them on the Q&A form, or if you are in the Zoom meeting, you can write them in the chat. Make sure that they come to me. All right. So we are going to take a moment for a brain break. And what we do for the brain break, some of you have been here before, some of you haven't, is a quick game of Would You Rather. So I am going to give you two options or two choices, and you are either going to do jumping jacks or toe touches based on your choice. But here's the deal. If we are going to get up and be active for 2-3 minutes, you need to promise that when we are done, you can sit down, be quiet, and be ready to listen and learn from our question and answer time with Monique. Is that something we can handle? Thumbs up. Some of you, most of you. All right. So if you, how about you stand up if you are able, and make sure that you have enough room around you that you're not going to hit the people around you. So you may need to spread out a little bit. If you don't have a ton of room, you can do it with T-Rex arms. That works too. But just make sure you don't smack the people beside you. I don't think they would appreciate it. And it's probably not a way to show kindness. So I'm going to give you the question, and then I am going to say, lock in your answer. And that's when you choose your answer and think about it. And then I am going to count to 5. And while I am counting to 5 is when you're either going to do toe touches or jumping jacks. All right, here we go. So the first one in the book, it said that I can show kindness, not the actual words, but I show kindness when I take my dog for an extra long walk. And then later in the book, it talks about the cat. So the question is, would you rather have a pet dog for jumping jacks or a pet for toe touches? So if you want a dog, you would do jumping jacks. If you'd rather a cat, you're going to do toe touches. So lock in your answer, lock it in. And here we go. Jumping jacks or toe touches. 1, let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5. Amazing. I see a lot of jumping jacks. We have a lot of dog people, but I saw Monique doing toe touches. All right. So the next one. All right. You ready to listen? for our next one. So this one was about showing kindness by sharing. And I see them sitting at a table and drawing and doing some art. So my question, when you get together with your friends, of these two options, would you rather, well, I'm in the way, do some arts and crafts for jumping jacks or play a wild and ruckus game of hide and seek where you can move your bodies and run around the house? All right. So arts and crafts, jumping jacks, hide and seek for toe touches. Lock in your answer. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I definitely saw a mixture of both options that time. Now, the last one, um, they are showing kindness by bringing food to family members or being kind to family members. Now, it looks like they're bringing food. Perhaps they're going for dinner and sharing some food together with their family. So the question is, would you rather have people over to your house for dinner? Well, that's that side. Have people over to your house for dinner? Or would you rather go over to someone else's house for dinner? Do you like being the guest or do you like having guests over? All right. So for jumping jacks, is you like having people over at your house? For toe touches, you like being the guest at somebody else's house. All right. Lock in your answers. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Could you please have a seat? All right. Can you take a deep breath? Breathe in, hand out. Excellent.
That was awesome.
All right. So we do those brain breaks so that we can move our bodies so our brains are ready to focus. Because sometimes if we sit for too long, it's hard to pay attention. Um, but by doing the brain break, hopefully we've rested our brains and our bodies so that we can get started again. So we are going to now do our Q&A. We have about 10 minutes or so left to ask Monique some questions. So again, if you have a question, write it in the chat or in the Q&A form, and we will try to answer them. And I just want to say that there are so many learners that join us for these events that it is absolutely impossible for me to ask every single question that gets asked during our event. But I want you to know that I do read them all because I read them and it helps me plan our next events. Or it's a conversation that I can have a follow-up discussion with Monique and get back to y'all on some important pressing questions. All right. So if you do have questions, please write them in the Q&A form. While you are doing that, in the resource package, there's a letter to the author activity. So as a follow-up to today, if you want to write a letter to Monique, tell her what you learned, what you appreciated about our time together, and maybe ask a question. I can't guarantee she'd be able to get back to all of you because, like I said, there's a lot of you. But authors love to hear from their readers. All right. So there's that activity in there. And while you are thinking about your questions and getting them written down, I just want to let you know about our Pink Shirt Day virtual classroom that has lots of activities. There's videos about bullying and how to show kindness and that sort of thing. There's an art activity. And then on the bookshelf here, if you click the bookshelf, it'll go to another library that has a lot of read aloud books that you can read about kindness and bullying and respect and all those things. So that's something you can explore on your own at home, or your teacher can explore with you in the classroom. All right. So without further ado, let's get to our Q&A. So like I said, write down your questions and I will ask as many as I can in rapid fire during this 10-minute time we have together. Are you ready, Monique?
I'm ready.
Excellent. So we generally get questions about you as an author, about your book, and then sometimes about the topic that we are talking about. So I'll try and keep them in those categories, but we'll see how it goes. So one question that we have is, have you always wanted to be a writer? And Or when did you write your first book? And have you always wanted to write, or what inspired you to start writing?
Oh, I never ever saw myself as a writer. That wasn't anything I ever planned, but I used to tell a lot of stories when I was younger. So much so my dad used to tease me and he would say, "Now, Monique, did that really happen or is that one of your stories?" And my cousins and I used to make up plays and put them on for our family. But about 12 years ago now, I had a serious health issue and I had been getting kind of ideas for books, but then I had this serious health issue and it was the inspiration to start writing. So my first book came out actually 10 years ago. And over the last 10 years, there's been 10 books. And coming just a few days actually after our visit here on March 12th is a new children's book called Circle of Love. And then when you all come back to school in the fall next year, there's another children's book coming called Dreaming Alongside. Luckily, both of them illustrated by Nicole Neidhart. So, sometimes life presents these opportunities, and you'll see that as you go through life. And sometimes we have to just jump on them. And that's how I became an author, really.
Awesome. Well, I think you kind of already asked this question, but Lexi from Langley Fine Arts wants to know, how did you get the inspiration for the specific books that you have written?
The first children's book you can see over my shoulder here, My Heart Fills with Happiness. I was doing some work with an Aboriginal Head Start, one of our cultural preschools in Mission. And I was working with the parents and the grandparents and the staff. And at lunchtime, the children joined us. And there was a little one his temperament, he was a little more cautious. He was a little more careful. But then he locked eyes on his cookum, which is gram in my language. He ran right over to her. And she took his face in her hands like this. And she looked at him with so much love. His whole body changed. And it made me think about, like, I just saw his heart fill with happiness. So I wondered what fills my heart with happiness. So that's how that book was inspired. Every book has its own inspiration. When We Are Kind, and then this book, I Hope, that just came out at the beginning of this school year, illustrated by Gabrielle Guimard, were both inspired on a family holiday. I find that on holidays that's a time when ideas come a lot for me about books.
Um, we have students from Surrey Christian School that want to know, is being an author hard?
Ooh. For me, it's not. It's actually one of the times I feel most alive because I love being able to be creative and create a story. And some of my books have characters that you get to just kind of create another being in the world. So, no, for me, being an author is a time that I experience immense joy. And then I get opportunities like this, right, on Pink Shirt Day to visit with you. So there's lots of ways that being an author, besides simply writing the books, brings joy into my life.
Uh, Apparently, I have no words. Um, so I was wondering, if you have any advice that you would give to the young writers in our midst who may have aspirations of being an author one day, or are just beginning writers. What advice would you give them?
I would say just keep writing, right? Just keep that practice, but also to pay attention. I'm actually trained as a psychiatric nurse, and that was one of the things we learned in nursing school was to pay attention. And it has served me so well as a writer because, if you think about if you go into a coffee shop or when you go into school, there's all kinds of characters and there's all kinds of ways that people are being or what people are wearing or the way people are talking or the way somebody looks at something, the way something smells that all help to bring a story alive. But if we're on a device or if we're not paying attention, or sometimes also if we're really grumpy, we don't notice all these things. It's just like, as we were talking about earlier, we might not also notice the acts of kindness. And so that's why I think, the more that we can pay attention as writers and future illustrators as well.
Awesome. So you shared with us some examples of ways that we can show kindness to other people. I'm wondering if you have a story to tell us of a time where someone showed you kindness either through their actions or through their words.
Oh my goodness. I have so many stories of when people have been kind to me. Oh, I think probably, it actually makes me a little teary. And I think sometimes that's what kindness can do, right? It can really impact our hearts. In the same way, when we get bullied, it can impact us. And kindness almost has a stronger feeling of like being cared for. I was in Toronto and I was with some friends and we were in an outside patio, but I was just in this feeling of desperation. And this gentleman came walking by and he just looked at me so gently and he said, "It's in your eyes and it's in your heart. Never question." And then he kept going. And that act of just pausing for a moment and seeing me and acknowledging me literally changed my life. And I think that's one of the things that we don't always understand about kindness is that we don't know what's actually going on for other people. And so when we might be mean to them, that might be, an extra pile to what already they're experiencing. But when we're kind, we can help change their whole day, maybe their week, and in some instances, their whole life.
Yeah, I think that's also I think something that's important to remember is that we don't know what people around us are experiencing and what they're going through, and that when we aren't kind, that it could have a huge impact on them because they're already in a place where they're not doing very well. But when we are kind to people, and if they're going through a hard time or even if they're not, that can have a lasting impact because that was years and years and years ago, the story that you're telling. But it still has an impact on you and still makes you feel teary so many years down the road. And I think we
Mhm.
do. And I think that we do need to remember how much of an impact our actions have on other
Yes.
people. So I have just a couple more questions, probably actually only one or two more questions before we end our time together. But in the book, it says that we are kind when we remember that we are all related. Now, I'm kind of wondering, what does that mean to remember that we're all related? And why does it matter? And why would it help us show kindness more?
Remember that we're all related is that in so many beliefs around the world, that it's known that we are a human family, that we are in many ways related to each other, that my action has a reaction to every single human being. And not just us as humans. When you look at that beautiful illustration by Nicole, you see the flowers, you see the butterflies, you see the trees. Remembering that, yes, we are related to each other as humans, right? We are a human family, but we also have our non human relatives, the trees, the robins, your dogs, your cats. Maybe you've got a bird, maybe you've got a fish. My son has a fish named Daryl, right? You've got all these elements in our life that are alive that we are actually related to. And when I think about, the, my neighbor sitting beside me in school, if I think about them as a relative, I will treat them usually different than if I don't think about them or care for them in any way. So that relation, it's one of our teachings that we are in relation with each other all the time. And my actions have a reaction around the world. And so it's not just us also as humans, right? Our non-human relatives. So yeah, when we are kind, we remember that we are all related.
Awesome. Well, you have given us so much to think about today about kindness and respect to ourselves, to each other, and to the world around us. And
Mm.
so I want to thank you so much for sharing that with us, taking the time to share your knowledge and expertise and stories with us.
My
We
pleasure. Thank you.
We are going to wrap up because we are running out of time. But I'm wondering if you have one last word or something you would like to leave us with today before we wrap up.
Hmm. I would invite you today to think about using the words thank you as many times as possible and sincerely, right? To really say thank you to people, because that is a way of being kind, is showing your gratitude. So whether it's somebody holding the door, somebody sharing food, your a parent or a grandparent or a relative making meal for you, somehow, you are being cared for today and to offer thanks. Maybe for me, sometimes it's when my cat cuddles up and curls. I'm like, thank you. Right. Sometimes we need loving. So, and for me, it's as both Haley and I started our day offering thanksgiving, offering our gratitude to those who've been the caretakers and the stewards of the lands that we are blessed to live on today. That's one of the most important ways I think of being grateful in these times.
Awesome. Well, thank you again very much for sharing with us. And thank you, everyone who joined us today. And remember that Pink Shirt Day is just one day, but that does not mean it is the only day that we should be standing up against bullying and being kind and respectful. It's just one day that we take out to remember and remind us so that the rest of the year we can continue being kind people that are good citizens and respectful of the people around us. All right. So, with that, we need to wrap up today, but I want to say thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and we will see you again another time.